The exact weapon that makes a nuclear aircraft carrier the deadliest ship on Earth is the one thing they hide behind an armed guard and a lockbox: the ship's master clock. If that single digital clock desynchronizes by even 1/10 of a second, the guidance systems on $70 billion worth of fighter jets will blind fire into the ocean. For 9 months, my rack was exactly 4 inches beneath the steel deck where those jets slammed down at 140 miles an hour, every 45 seconds for 20 hours a day. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm taking you past the public relations tours and deep into the forbidden zones of a floating fortress. You will see exactly how 6,000 people survive on nuclear distilled water that tastes like jet fuel, the psychological reality of going 90 days without seeing a single ray of sunlight, and the secret code words broadcast over the ship's intercom that mean a sailor has just gone overboard into pitch-black water. But to understand how this 5,000-man machine actually functions, you have to understand its biggest paradox. Because despite carrying enough thermonuclear capability to flatten a continent, the most volatile, heavily policed, and black market traded substance on the entire ship isn't the jet fuel, and it isn't the missiles. It's a standard plastic bottle of liquid laundry detergent, and if you get caught with the wrong brand, the master-at-arms will throw you in the brig. When a civilian looks at a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, they see a symbol of geopolitical dominance. When a documentarian looks at it, they see a marvel of engineering. But when you are assigned to one, you quickly realize it is something else entirely. A highly compressed dystopian city-state floating in the middle of nowhere, populated almost entirely by exhausted 20-year-olds operating under conditions of extreme sensory deprivation. The stakes here aren't just about global military positioning, they are about maintaining human sanity while living on top of 2 Westinghouse A4W nuclear reactors. I was deployed on the USS Nimitz. Before stepping aboard, I expected the rigid, sterile discipline you see in recruitment commercials. The reality is that a carrier at sea is a brutal ecosystem of survival. The ship produces 400,000 gallons of fresh water a day by flash evaporating seawater using reactor heat, but the distribution pipes are decades old. The water coming out of the scuttle tastes distinctly of JP5 aviation fuel. You drink it anyway because the flight deck is 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and dehydration means a lapse in judgment. And a lapse in judgment on a carrier means people die. Every single square inch of this 1,092-foot hull is engineered for violence, which means it is aggressively hostile to human life. There are no windows. There is no concept of personal space. Your entire existence is narrowed down to a coffin-sized bunk called a rack, stacked 3 high in a berthing compartment shared with 120 other sleep-deprived sailors. If you want to survive 9 months of this without losing your mind, you have to learn the unwritten rules of the underground economy. An economy built entirely on things the Navy forgot to simulate on land. The first thing no documentary shows you is the class warfare dictated by the color of your jersey. The flight deck is a ballet of death, color-coded for safety. Yellow shirts direct planes, blue shirts chalk and chain them, red shirts handle the ordnance, and purple shirts, the grapes, pump the volatile jet fuel. But beneath the deck, this creates a tribal caste system. The Airedales who work the planes look down on the snipes who work in the deep engineering spaces. Because space is the most valuable currency on Earth, these tribes fight silent, vicious turf wars. If a snipe accidentally walks through an Airedale mess deck, their laundry might mysteriously vanish into the ship's incinerator. Which brings us back to the black market. Because the Navy only washes your uniform once a week and they use industrial, unscented detergent that gives half the crew chemical rashes, a contraband bottle of store-bought Tide is worth more than $100 cash. It is the grease that turns the wheels of the ship. You trade it for extra rack pillows, for a functional Wi-Fi signal code, or for a clean pair of socks when the supply chain breaks down 500 miles off the coast of nowhere. But the physical discomfort is nothing compared to the psychological warping of the deep hull spaces. To understand the true cost of this deployment, you have to visit the reactor department. This is where the midpoint reframe happens for every sailor. Documentaries tell you these ships can run for 20 years without refueling, painting a picture of effortless, clean energy. What they don't tell you is that the human cost of maintaining that reactor is staggering. The sailors down there work 18-hour shifts in spaces so deeply shielded that radio waves can't penetrate them. They live in a complete information vacuum. While the rest of the ship gets sporadic, heavily filtered text-only emails from families back home, the reactor techs see nothing. They exist in a state of perpetual 1980s isolation. And because they are exposed to constant, low-level operational stress, the Navy monitors them with a hyper-specific tool, the green flash. Every morning they are forced to look at a colored card to test for sudden onset color blindness, a symptom of severe neurological fatigue. If you fail, you aren't sent to a hospital. You are moved to the galley to chop onions for 16 hours because the ship cannot afford to lose a body. And this is where the grand illusion of the aircraft carrier completely shatters. The world believes this ship is a fortress of absolute control. The truth is, it is an environment of managed chaos hanging by a thread, and the greatest threat isn't a Russian submarine or a Chinese missile. It is the ship itself. Around month 5, a phenomenon called channel fever sets in. The human mind isn't built to go months without seeing the horizon or feeling a breeze. Sailors begin to hallucinate. The walls of the berthing start to feel like they are closing in. To combat this, the command authorizes steel beach picnics, one afternoon where the flight deck is cleared and you're allowed to stand outside and eat charred burgers. But it's a psychological band-aid. Because while you're standing on that deck looking at the beautiful, endless blue of the ocean, you notice something the Navy tries desperately to hide: the spotters. There are armed masters-at-arms stationed at every edge of the deck, eyes locked not on the horizon for enemies, but directly on the sailors. They are there because the urge to simply jump off the edge and end the noise is a documented medical contagion on long deployments. If someone does jump, or falls, the ship doesn't stop. A carrier traveling at 30 knots takes miles to turn around. When the phrase, "Oscar, Oscar, Oscar," crackles over the 1MC intercom, the entire ship freezes. That is the code for man overboard. If it happens at night, the survival rate drops to less than 5%. The suction from the ship's massive 4-bladed screws creates a vacuum that pulls anything near the hull directly down into the blades. I watched a night recovery drill where the dummy was sucked under. It emerged a mile behind the ship in 3 separate pieces. That reality creates a hyper-vigilant paranoia that binds the crew together, but it also creates a dark, insular culture. We stopped looking at each other as friends and started looking at each other as safety tethers. You don't care if the guy next to you is a good person. You only care if his hands are fast enough to grab your harness if you slip on a patch of hydraulic fluid during a night launch. This constant state of high-alert survival changes how your brain processes fear. You become numb to the danger of the jets, the radiation of the reactors, and the deep, black abyss of the ocean beneath you. But the human mind always finds something new to fear when the macro terrors become mundane. And on a carrier, that micro-terror lives in the structural architecture of the ship itself. It's the sound of the frame flexing. When the ship hits heavy seas, the steel plates groan with a pitch that sounds exactly like a human scream. And if you listen closely to that scream during the 2 a.m. watch, you learn the one secret the Navy keeps under the strictest lock and key. A secret that has nothing to do with warfare, and everything to do with what happens to a human being when you isolate them from the rest of the world for too long. That secret is the existence of the ghost sailors. Every carrier has them. These are the crew members who have slipped through the cracks of the ship's massive administrative bureaucracy. In a city of 6,000 people, where faces change constantly, a sailor can be reassigned to a temporary duty compartment, have that compartment disbanded, and simply vanish from the roster while remaining on board. They find empty voids in the hull, build makeshift racks out of stolen flight gear, and live off food scavenged from the galleys at night. They stop showing up to muster, stop wearing their uniforms, and become permanent residents of the ship's underbelly, completely invisible to the chain of command. I met one in the deep auxiliary machinery room during my 7th month. He hadn't spoken to an officer or done a day of official work in 12 weeks. He wasn't a saboteur. He was just a 21-year-old kid who had discovered that the only way to survive the crushing pressure of the machine was to become a ghost inside of it. When my 9 months were up and we finally pulled back into San Diego, the transition back to reality didn't feel like a relief. It felt like decompression sickness. The silence of the land was deafening. For months, I couldn't sleep without a white noise machine turned up to maximum volume to mimic the roar of the ventilation fans. But the most jarring realization didn't hit me until I went to a local grocery store to buy a bottle of laundry detergent. Standing in that bright, wide-open aisle, looking at hundreds of plastic bottles that anyone could just buy for $10, I realized the true illusion of the nuclear carrier. The Navy spends billions to project power across the globe, constructing the most complex weapon system in human history. But that weapon doesn't run on nuclear fission, and if you look at an aircraft carrier now, you'll still see the sovereign power of a superpower. But if you look closely at the comments section below, you'll see something else. The real crew. If you served on a carrier, drop your ship's hull number in the comments. Let people know what department you survived and what the water tasted like during your cruise. If you want to see exactly how these subterranean black markets operate across the rest of the military, hit the subscribe button right now. In our next breakdown, we are unlocking the heavily guarded, unwritten survival rules of a completely different world. The deep-sea ballistic missile submarine crews who live in total radio silence for 6 months at a time. Click the video on your screen right now to dive straight into it, and I'll see you down in the hull. For a 90,000-ton naval warship, pulling into port isn't a vacation. It is the most dangerous, hyper-coordinated evolution a crew will execute at sea. Long before the civilian coastline is even visible, the ship shifts into a state of silent, high-alert paranoia known as sea and anchor detail. The weapon systems don't power down. They lock onto the harbor entrance. Because history has proven that a multi-billion-dollar vessel is never more vulnerable to a catastrophic attack than when it slows down in a narrow, shallow channel. Beneath the deck, the ship's navigation team is calculating depths down to the single inch. In the engine rooms, tech crews stand by the throttles, ready for split-second commands because a single mechanical failure here means drifting straight into a multi-million-dollar collision. Up on deck, the line handlers take their positions. They aren't handling normal rope. They are wrestling with heavy industrial nylon lines under thousands of pounds of tension. If one of those lines snaps under the strain, it releases a phenomenon called snapback, a kinetic whip crack that can instantly shatter steel railings or slice a sailor completely in half. To actually stop the ship, the crew relies on harbor tugboats, small, high-horsepower workhorses that push directly against the warship's massive steel hull, guiding it to the concrete pier. The moment the ship comes to a dead halt, the master anchors are ready to drop, and the heavy mooring lines are thrown to the line handlers waiting on the pier. They are quickly wrapped around giant steel bits, locking the ship's absolute weight to the earth. Only when the final line is reported secured to the bridge does the captain utter the most relieving words a tired crew can hear over the intercom. Shift watch to the quarterdeck. But for the crew, the work doesn't stop. Within minutes, the brow is pushed over, the ship is connected to shore power, and the force protection teams set up armed perimeter guard posts around the pier to protect the vessel while it rests. If you want to see exactly what happens when these deployments go wrong, and how a single tactical mistake can turn a routine port visit into an international crisis, hit the subscribe button right now. Click the video on your screen to unlock our deep dive breakdown on the darkest naval collisions in modern history, and I'll see you over there.